Do you love sewing pillows, or maybe you have a kid that loves sewing pillows? And here's a secret, pretty much every kid loves to sew pillows. There's a reason that we keep our stuffing in an Oscar the Grouch trash can in the studio, because we go through like 60 pounds of it a year. But after a while, you may find that sewing a pillow is just kind of like sewing a pillow, and it's not all that exciting. So if you're looking for something to kind of level up your pillow sewing, this is it. We're using my two new favorite materials for sewing projects, vinyl and confetti from the Confetti bar, to make this super fun vinyl confetti initial applique. I love a good applique. It's a great way to fancy up a project. It's also a great way to practice sewing curves, which we know can be a little bit tricky. And we're gonna put this on a pillow today, but really the focus is on the applique, and you could put this on so many different things from a pillow. I was also thinking a tote bag could be really cute. In fact, I started dreaming about a tote bag that maybe had a fabric cone to it and then had an applique ice cream on top. It's like an ice cream cone, right? And you'd stuff the ice cream part with confetti. And so if anybody wants to take on that project, please tag me so I can see it, because I just think that would be awesome. But so if you're not doing a pillow or a tote, you could always just make a really cute wall hanging. That would be adorable in a nursery with a kid's names or their initials, or you could do, there's so many ideas. I could just keep on going. Anyways, vinyl applique is like my new favorite thing. Thanks so much for joining me. My name is Laura Casaway. I am the owner of Hartford Stitch. Since 2015, I have been teaching kids and adults in my studio right outside Hartford, Connecticut. And now I get to teach you too through our video workshops, Learn to Sew e-courses, and of course our YouTube tutorials. I very strongly believe that sewing is practical and creative and empowering. I really don't think that there is a right way or a wrong way to do it, but there are plenty of tips and tricks that you can learn along the way to make your sewing that much better. If you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and leave a note down below and let me know what vinyl and confetti projects you're dreaming of sewing right now. All right, so this is a beginner project. It really isn't that difficult, but I do expect that you have a little bit of experience. You should know how to wind a bobbin, thread a machine, measure and cut fabric, pin, and basic sewing skills. So like a back stitch, sewing a straightish line, turning a corner. So these are all the basic skills that you need to actually make the pillow part of it. And if this is your first time sewing with vinyl, I highly recommend you check out this video where I go into all sorts of details about where to buy vinyl, how to prep it, and of course how to sew it so it moves through your machine really smoothly. Once you've done that, let's start talking about the materials and tools you need to make your applique pillow. Obviously, you can make this pillow in whatever size you want, but if you want it to look the same size as the one I'm making, you're gonna want half a yard of quilting cotton and about 7" by 7"-ish piece of vinyl. So I'm using the 8 gauge vinyl with this. It's a little bit thinner, but it will work. The 12 gauge would have worked for this project as well. I have my thread. Now, I know this thread doesn't match my fabric, and usually that's what I tell you to do, but you're gonna see the stitching on top of your vinyl, and so I kind of liked how this yellow was so similar to the one in my confetti mix. And then of course I have this beautiful mix of confetti from the Confetti bar that's gonna look just so awesome in this pillow. And last but not least is stuffing. So you probably need about roughly 9 ounces of stuffing in order to really fill this pillow up nice and firm. So I'm not going to show you how to cut the fabric. Measuring and cutting is something that we go over in our Kids Learn to Sew e-course, and we really go into a lot of detail about it because it's such an important skill. But we're going to want to cut this to 2 12" by 12" pieces. Okay, let's talk about tools. Tools are fairly straightforward for this. It's our usual lineup with a couple small additions. So for cutting your fabric, you're going to want your ruler. You know, I love a clear grid ruler, but any ruler will do. And your fabric scissors and chalk for marking out your lines. You'll want your paper scissors for cutting the vinyl. Remember, we don't want to cut the vinyl with the fabric scissors. And thread snips for cutting our threads. And of course your seam ripper, just in case anything goes wrong. You're going to want clips. And like I said in our very first video about sewing with vinyl, clips are almost essential for sewing vinyl on because it doesn't put holes in the vinyl. Now, if you don't have clips, binder clips will work. Even paper clips can kind of work, but they do shift around a little bit. They're not quite as strong as these guys. You may also want pins for when we actually go to sew the pillow together. And a dry erase marker. Dry erase markers are excellent for making your marks on the vinyl because it's not permanent and you can just wipe it right off. And then lastly, of course, you're going to need your sewing machine. So take a moment, get all your materials and your tools, and next up will be cutting. My 2 pieces of 12" by 12" fabric cut out. And again, you can cut them to whatever size you want. I also have my piece of 7" by 7" vinyl. Now it's tempting to kind of fill the entire space with your confetti applique. I found that if it's too big, it sort of wraps around the sides once everything's stuffed, so it's a little bit better to keep it in the center. But get a sense of what size you want, and then you can move your fabric off to the side. And I'm just gonna put this piece of paper underneath so you can see it a little bit better. I'm gonna take my dry erase marker and I'm going to draw my initial. Now, of course, you don't have to do an initial. You could do any sort of shape that you want. The big thing is you want to keep it nice and big and chunky so that we can fill it full of confetti. So take a look at your letter. Make sure that there's no really narrow passageways. So you saw that I kind of went back in and I tweaked that little area a little bit because it was getting a little small. If it's very small passageways, it's going to make it really tricky to stuff with confetti. In fact, that's not that small, but I want it to be bigger anyways. All right, so if you watched our confetti garland video, you saw that I sewed this and then I had you cut it. Because we are sewing this layer of vinyl onto fabric and not onto another piece of vinyl, I'm actually gonna have you cut along the outside edge first, and then we'll sew it on. It just works a little bit better that way. So remember to use your paper scissors and carefully cut out all of your shapes. All right, and once you have everything cut out, you can go back through and get rid of all that dry erase marker you used to trace everything out. Sometimes spraying it with a little bit of water and paper towels can help as well. So once that's done, you want to lay out one piece of your pillow. So I just have one layer here, right side facing up. Remember, that's the pretty side, the side you want facing out when you're done, facing up. And I'm going to place my E in the middle. Now, before we go any further, I want you to decide how you're going to sew this shape. And more importantly, where you are going to leave your gap to stuff it. So from experience, I can tell you that I am going to leave my gap on this long side. So that means I'm going to sew all the way around here, up, down, and I'm going to be able to get back up here again. Then I can stuff my confetti this way. The very first time I did it, I left my gap over here, I think, because I thought, oh, there's a straight line. But of course, it was so difficult to get it around here to the bottom. So this time we're going to leave our gap over there. So take a moment, kind of think that one through when it comes to your own letter, because it's better to figure it out now than before we go to clip it all up. All right, so once you know that, you're going to take your clip and sort of fold your fabric in on top so that you can grab the vinyl and grab the fabric at the same time. And I'm going to do the same over here. And so my clip, there we go, is really catching that vinyl. And you want to make sure that vinyl is staying nice and flat. And you can add a couple more over on the side as well. Just don't clip the side where you decided you're going to start and stop sewing, because we're going to need access to that in just a minute. Once you're all clipped, and now's a great time to pause and catch up and do that if you haven't yet, we're going to head over to the sewing machine. Okay, so just like in our last video with the confetti heart garland, and in our first video all about sewing with vinyl, I have my Teflon foot on. Now, if you watched the first two videos, you also saw that I had like kind of put a little coat of paper on mine to allow it to scoot along. Because we have fabric on the bottom and not vinyl on the bottom, that extra paper isn't necessary. Though I do find that the Teflon foot is helpful because of the vinyl on the top. So, like I said in the intro, we're not going to go through all the details about threading your machine or how to sew. Those are things we cover in our kids e-course and in our in-studio classes. But basically, you want to start at one side of that little gap you left. Make sure you backstitch and then sew all the way around. Come back and leave probably 2 or 3 inches and backstitch again. So now is a great time for you to pause, get your sewing machine set up, and sew on that vinyl letter. Now it's time to do the confetti. So what would be very helpful is to find a pencil. I find that this is the best thing for kind of wiggling that confetti in wherever you need it to go. So go gently, because even though I'm sure you remembered to backstitch, you still don't want to rip the fabric or the vinyl off of it. And just kind of start by feeding this in and then poke it. Now it might take a little maneuvering to get around some of the curves and far away places, so take your time and you can fill it as full of confetti as you want. So I'm going to do this. Now is a great time for you to pause and fill your own. All right, so once you have it stuffed enough, make sure you leave a little opening here so we can close it shut. We're going to head back to the sewing machine. All right, so super simple here. Just overlap your stitches just a little bit. Sew forward, sew back, sew all the way down, back stitch again, so we close up that gap and we don't lose any of our confetti. I am sure that your letter looks totally awesome. If you're like me, you're going to be finding confetti stuck to your sweater and in your workspace for a while to come, and that is not a bad thing. So you have your main piece right side facing up. That's the piece that you just applique on. And you want to put your other piece right side facing down. If your print has a direction, make sure you're aware of it. All right, and so from here on out, we're just sewing a basic pillow. So I'm going to speed this all up. You can watch the video, pause, and then do it yourself. You did it! I would love to see your final project. I am so curious as to what confetti you used, if you put it on a pillow or a tote bag, if you did my ice cream idea. So if you share on social media, please be sure to tag me at Hartford Stitch and Jessica at the Confetti Bar so that we can see your creations. Thanks so much for joining me, and if you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up. Hit subscribe because I'll be bringing you all sorts of new videos to bring our Hartford Stitch Sewing School into your home. If you're looking for some more information on vinyl, please be sure to check out this video here and that video there. Until next time, happy stitching!